Hi there! To all of you newcomers, I would just like to introduce myself. My name is Izzy and I study psychology at Royal Holloway and I'm in my third year. I looked around 13 different universities when I was deciding where to go. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to study at university for quite a long time. Long story short, I ended up doing psychology. I think in a way, for you guys, it's better that I wasn't always set on doing psychology. So I thought an awful lot about whether I wanted to do it at university, and I thought about the pros and the cons. Hopefully my thoughts will help you guys. So I've decided the best way to do this video is to actually make it two videos. So the first video is just going to be the pros and cons of doing psychology at university, regardless of which university it is. Obviously my experience of it has been at Royal Holloway, but I think because nearly all psychology degrees have to be accredited by the British Psychological Society, and so because of that, a lot of the things that you study will be quite similar across the different universities. Then the second video is going to be about the pros and cons of doing psychology at Royal Holloway specifically. So one of the best things about doing a psychology degree is that I think it's really useful for a lot of jobs. If you're not quite sure or the career that you're leaning towards doesn't need a specific degree, psychology is a great degree to study, because it's quite analytical. You do a statistics module and you can tell employers that, and so it shows that you're able to think sort of more scientifically and more with an analytical mind, and I think employers really do value that. But at the same time, it's still an essay writing subject, so you become quite good at communicating, so you have both sides, and I think a lot of employers really like that. And I think it's quite useful if you want to work in a business in some kind of capacity, say HR, marketing, as a manager. I think psychology is really useful because essentially it is the study of human behaviour, and you can apply that to consumer behaviour. So obviously if you're working in a business, then you need to understand your customers and their behaviour. And with many psychology degrees, or certainly here at Royal Holloway anyway, in your final year it gets a bit more applied, and so you start to see how it links to the real world. So I looked at advertising in my social psychology course. Also, I would say generally speaking, psychology has a fairly good reputation. Like, there are some degree subjects that aren't always taken quite so seriously. When you say that you've done a psychology degree, people tend to be quite impressed, also sometimes a bit scared, because they somehow think that you can read their mind or something. And I think it can give you a much better understanding of the world in a way. I know that sounds cheesy, but you can kind of understand people a bit better, and I think that's a really good skill to have. And obviously when you study psychology, you learn about mental disorders, and so many people suffer from them. If you can have a much better understanding of some of those issues, then I would argue that maybe that's going to be more helpful for you than, say, understanding a novel. Another pro is that you don't need to have studied it before. I never did it for GCSE or A-level, and I've been fine, because in your first year they make sure that you're all up to speed. Also with psychology, many universities don't require that you've done any specific A-levels. There are a few where they want you to have done a science A-level, but a lot of places don't ask for any particular subject. Another pro is that you get to do research, even if it's just in lab classes in your first and second year, or whether it's when you do a project in your third year. You get to do some kind of research. So you get to design an experiment and then conduct it and then analyse all the results and present it in a report. And this is a great skill to have, and it's a great skill to tell employers about, because you're investigating something and trying to think about what the significance is of your findings. And it's quite fun. It's fun to be a bit more hands-on than just always having a lecturer talk at you. for me anyway, it was a lot more scientific than I was perhaps expecting. I expected to have to do sort of a biology kind of module. I knew I had to do statistics, but I think sometimes it can be a little bit dry, because with psychology they're quite strict on the way that they like you to write, so it's very much about being concise, and you can't just say, oh, I think this. You always have to back it up with evidence. You can't be that expressive. Maybe that's just me because I did English and history at A level. You can't say, oh, from my experience of being in this situation, I found this. With psychology, you are mainly reading journal articles. You don't really read that many books. Obviously there are textbooks and they're a great starting point, but they expect you to read a lot of journal articles and sometimes they're just a bit dry. Okay, this one I don't technically know if it's every single university. Certainly at Royal Holloway you can't choose what modules you take for the first or the second year. I understand that in the first year you don't know what you like in the first year, but you can't choose in the second year either, and with a lot of degree courses, it's quite normal not to be able to choose in your first year. But most degrees let you have some kind of flexibility in the second year, and I didn't have any of that. And I think, obviously it's not as interesting perhaps if there's some that you like a lot more than others. It would be so nice to just do those. But also I think in terms of marks, it's a bit unfair, because often when you really like something you do tend to be better at it, but in your third year you do get to choose. I feel like you have to take quite a lot of exams if you do a psychology degree. Certainly at Royal Holloway we do a lot more than a lot of subjects. So in my first and second year I had 8 exams, and we had a 3-hour stats exam which was rough. And related to exams, I would say that there's a lot of information to learn. Obviously I don't know what other subjects are like, but in our lectures anyway we get told about a lot of research, because it's a research based field really. I suppose because it's a science, it's all about starting with this research and then coming up with theories from it, and so consequently there is an awful lot of names and dates to remember. Our whole lectures are just crammed full of them, which is really interesting. It's great to hear about all these really significant findings, but it's a lot to learn. Okay, I don't know if this is Royal Holloway specific again, but certainly here with our dissertation you don't actually get to do any research. It is basically a literature review. Now this is because we have a group project. Now you do research, but unfortunately it's in a group, and so consequently you're relying on other people to do the work and you don't have any choice in who you're with. And equally you can't completely say what you want to research because there are 3 other people, and also your supervisor has a massive say in what direction the research takes. Okay, this last one is neither really a pro or a con, but just be aware that I think with a lot of psychology degrees you don't get that much contact time. I think that's the case with a lot of degrees anyway, but say if you're doing like medicine or something like that, then you might have lectures 9 till 5. But with psychology, certainly here you have about 8 hours of contact time, so which is nice in a way, but it means that they expect you to do a lot of independent reading.